The world has moved digital, and with digital world comes cyber threats. The question is, where is our continent in regards to cyber security? What are we doing policy-wise, personal-wise, and what is the future of the cyberspace in terms of security on this particular continent? Well, I will be having a conversation with Saldys Sheriff, who is a managing partner at Africa Risk Managers and Compliance Partners, to help us understand the world of cybersecurity, especially in the context of the African continent. But before we do that, let's take a look at his profile.
Saldys Jusu-Sheriff is a seasoned risk executive with over 22 years risk management, regulatory compliance, financial crime, information security and internal controls experience gained working for major global financial institutions such as Barclays Bank PLC UK, Barclays Africa Group South Africa, Credit Suisse, BNI Mellon, JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank in UK, Europe and Africa. Saldys has held senior executive positions in several continents, including as COO, Group Compliance and Financial Crime, Barclays Africa Group in South Africa, and Director Business Risk Management and Internal Controls, Barclays Corporate Global International Sales in the United Kingdom. Saldys is a founder and managing partner of Africa Risk Management and Compliance Partners, a Pan-African risk management, regulatory compliance and cybersecurity solutions company focused on serving needs of Africa's financial services sector. Saldys was the founder and inaugural chairman of the Barclays Africa Forum, a platform developed to showcase Africa's incredible businesses, innovators and award-winning entrepreneurs to the UK and global banking audience. Saldys Jusu-Sheriff is Sierra Leonean, based in Africa and the UK.
Thank you very much, sir, for making time to talk to us. First of all, help us understand the global. How important is cybersecurity on a global scale of things?
I think cybersecurity is by far the most significant risk that businesses face right across the world today. What we've seen, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on business globally, is a growth in the degree and in the amount of cyber criminality that's taking place across the world. I think the number of cyber attacks in 2020 compared to the previous 5 years, all our industry statistics tell us there's been a massive growth. I think in the African context, we are seeing a significant growth in the number of cyber attacks and in the variety and types of cyber attacks. And it has a significant impact on businesses and the value that has been created in businesses. Value can be lost overnight if customers' data is lost or misused. Value can be lost overnight in the trust that would be lost by customers in the people who provide businesses services to them. Yep. So it's really crucial that we focus in African businesses focus on cybersecurity and on protecting value in their businesses.
Definitely. Actually, that is quite elaborative in regards to the global scale of things and where Africa falls in this equation. Because when we talk of the continent and its role in the global business ecosystem, for example, of which now business is digital, always Africa is said to be behind. So the question is, in the world of cybersecurity, what is the differentiating factor between the lead markets in regards to how they've put themselves cybersecurity-wise vis-a-vis Africa as a continent, how we've positioned ourselves in regards to cybersecurity?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I mean, I think the reality is that the growth in the digital economy is moving at a different pace on the African continent compared to the rest of the world, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere. And even when we move further east into the Far East and into China, we're seeing an even more advanced use of the extension of the digital economy. I think from an Africa perspective, one thing's for sure, we've seen a great leap in terms of the use of mobile technology and mobile data. And we're seeing a significant and exponential growth in the rate of adoption of smartphones and of the digital platform. So although Africa is perhaps not at the same level as other regions like the Far East and the Northern Hemisphere, one thing's for sure, the problems that they're seeing today are the same problems that we will face in Africa in the future as our digital economies and as digital takes over as a preferred form of engagement by our customers.
Definitely. And we've seen in the local ecosystem, for example, in Kenya, when the banks were giving out their strategies, that's just an example of a segment of our economy. Actually, one of the biggest investments when you look at the outlook is in regards to cybersecurity and protecting themselves, especially in the financial world. How weak are our systems? And in regards, from your observation on the continent, how much money is being pumped into cybersecurity?
I think that it's fair to say that African banks are doing their very best to protect their customers and their customers from cyber attacks. Not just the banks, but the mobile network operators and the payment service providers are all doing their very best in that regard. I think the level of investment in cybersecurity right across the African continent really needs to shift away from not just the sort of network security aspect of things and the systems and technology, but also to the education and the engagement. We need to see financial institutions engaging their staff, training their staff better to understand what cybersecurity risk really is, and also their customers. We want to be able to see them engaging and educating their customers, their SME customers, their personal banking customers, and their personal finance services customers about how to stay safe online, how to prevent themselves being the vectors for cyber attacks going forwards.
That's very key. And from a policy perspective, we understand policy is very critical if we are to achieve, faster adoption of, global standards when you talk cybersecurity. Looking at African governments, has there been, policy measures that are put intentionally to make sure that our cybersecurity is well grounded?
I think that's one area of progress that's worthy of discussion. I think the vast majority of countries that we operate in, we're seeing that governments are stepping up to put in place the necessary legislation and regulations to protect consumers from the impact of cyber criminality and from cybercrime. So in many governments across the world, especially those within the Commonwealth, what we're seeing is the implementation of new regulations and new guidance to various business sectors on how they can improve the governance and the standards for cybersecurity management across their businesses.
Mm-hmm. That's very critical. Policy is key. Now, you've spoken about different types of, cyber threats that are facing our continent. Maybe elaborate for us a little bit. What are some of these threats and what are the measures that you're taking to counter them?
Well, I think what's really important to understand is that the threat landscape from a cybersecurity perspective is a global threat landscape. I think that whatever it is that we're seeing happening from a cybercriminality perspective on one part of the world is very much a precursor and a picture into what could happen elsewhere. So I hear a lot about, when I talk to business leaders on the continent, about the fact that, cyber threats that we're seeing in the Northern Hemisphere that are impacting big brands are not relevant. A lot of people say to me that, well, these aren't relevant to us on the African continent. We do business differently. Our business delivery mechanisms are not as digital. They're different. But the fact is, everybody is online in some way. So the reality is that as long as you're online, as long as you have a network, that's connected to the outside world in some way, then your business faces a cyber threat. That's just the reality. And I guess on the question of the types of cyber threats that we face today and their impact, the one key thing that we're seeing increasingly is in the area of ransomware. In fact, we have a webinar that we're running just to talk about the global ransomware threat landscape, and in particular how that impacts Africa. So we saw in the United States ransomware attacks that impacted infrastructure projects or critical infrastructure, I should say. Pipelines, even state governments have been impacted by ransomware attacks across financial institutions. And on the African continent, more recently, we've seen mobile network operators consistently being faced with ransomware attacks, malware attacks that actually stop their systems from operating. So denial of access attacks that mean that colleagues come into the office in the morning and they cannot run their platforms, and businesses are not able to operate. Very often there's a ransom demand that goes with that.
Looking at the impact of failure to invest, properly in a proper cyber security system, how much in the global scale are we losing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, that's another fantastic question, Noah. I mean, I think, it is estimated that, cybersecurity is costing the global economy in 2019 something like $1.9 trillion. But I think what we need to understand when we look at those numbers is that it's really, really difficult to be able to work out what the true number is. One of the things that we know is that cybersecurity has just become a new vector of criminality. So we shouldn't really look at cybersecurity in an abstract context. We should always look at it in the context of broader criminal behavior. We now know, for example, that in the ransomware space, there are organized crime groups that focus just on ransomware as their modus operandi. So for sure, impact figures in excess of 1.5, 1.9, nearly $2 trillion, but clearly much, much more than that. But also, I think that the other part of the impact that's not fully appreciated is, the brand impact of a cyber attack. So, a brand that's a consumer brand where information is key, or consumer information is key. That loss of confidence, that loss of trust in the brand. How do you value that? How do you value the brand ammunition when you allow your business to be the impact of a cyber attack? So the value is not just financial. It's not just the financial value that we work out in terms of the losses and so on. It's that sort of inherent value that's lost when a brand is impacted.